So there was a song that Tim McGraw wrote after he met his biological dad and found out that his biological dad was actually really sick and was going to die. And the name of the song is Live Like You Were Dying. And so it goes, the chorus of it goes, Tim asks, what did you do when you found out that you had this terminal disease? And he said, well, I went skydiving, went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. He says, I loved deeper, and I spoke sweeter, and I gave forgiveness to those I'd been denying. Think about that. I spoke sweeter and gave forgiveness to those I'd been denying. So when you look at today's gospel, it says it was 6 days before Passover, and Passover was the night that Jesus then is taken to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus is therefore taken the next day and put on the cross. So he's living like he's dying. He's got a week. Now, I know there are people in this congregation that have had a diagnosis like that, or someone near and dear to them has. And they know they have a terminal illness. And they not only live like they are dying, but they are. And it puts a different spin on things. Who knows, you might go skydiving, and you might go 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. But what normally happens is that people want to be surrounded by the people that they love, and that's exactly what Jesus is doing. What we know about the relationship between Jesus and Lazarus is that they are best friends. This is the man that Jesus cried for. He wept. If he hadn't done that, what else would confirmation boys remember as their very own statement? Because when you have to memorize something, it's only 2 words, Jesus wept. But again, this was his good friend that died. And Jesus loved this man so much that he went in after he had gone longer than the Jewish people thought the soul was there, and he resurrected him. And it was that particular action, the resurrection of Lazarus, that really got all of the Pharisees and scribes upset, and all of the Romans upset too. And it was that action that put Jesus on that way to being killed on the cross, because the concern was everybody is going to go to Jesus, and they're not going to listen to what we have to say anymore. And the Roman soldiers and the Jews and the Pharisees didn't really like that. And so they said, we have to get rid of him. So Jesus, knowing this is on his head, goes to his old buddy Lazarus. And it said they sat down and he ate. I want you to take a minute and think about all of those meals you've had with people all around the table that were really important to you. And sit and think about the conversation, and sit and think about the laughter and the stories in the family that get told over and over and over and over again till people that weren't even there take it on as if it's their very own story. I can just see Jesus and the disciples and Mary and Martha sitting there doing that. And so when dinner was over, they got up, and Jesus sat down, and Mary, of Mary and Martha and Lazarus fame, takes this costly jar of nard perfume. Now, it's costly in that it took a person that worked an average job a year of salary to pay for it. So she took that and she put it all over his feet. And then she took her hair and she dried it. a very personal, a very intimate kind of thing. So much so that when you look at the other gospel, it doesn't talk about the hair drying, and it doesn't talk about the person being Mary. It just talks about a woman. And so it's gotten extrapolated out that this is Mary Magdalene, and this is where Mary Magdalene comes off as a prostitute, and that's just not the case. I'm telling you right now, the only Mary that's there is the Mary and Martha Mary, and Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. So Mary has taken this costly perfume, she's put it on his feet, she's used her hair to dry it, and then Judas comes up and says, "Why would you waste all that money doing that?" A good way to waste a very good family meal. Let's go back to money and how much everything costs, and take away that touchy-feely, everybody's important out of the picture. So when we think about it, we're in the book of John, Gospel of John, and only a week later, it's not Mary on her knees washing feet. It's Jesus on his knees washing feet. We have it set up in this gospel that this intimate time between a really, really, really good friend getting his feet washed and getting nurtured, that he takes that to his really, really good friends, the disciples. And he washes their feet. And he takes the towel he has around his waist and he cleans their feet. Another very intimate time, another face-to-face time. Because that's what I'm told by people that are in their last days, weeks, months of life, is what they want anything, more than anything, is a face-to-face relationship with people that are important to them. That important financial stuff just isn't that important anymore. That it's all about the relationships that are important. Now, I do realize I'm in Texas and I'm not in North Carolina. But last night, for some fans in North Carolina, there was kind of a death. And then there's other fans like my daughter who goes to UNC that had a rebirth. But I want to tell you a story about Coach K. 37 years ago, there was this young man. Let me get his name. I want to be exactly correct on this. He was 33 years old at the time, and his name was Steve Mitchell. Sorry, he was 33 years at the time. His name was Steve Mitchell, and Steve Mitchell was born with Down syndrome, and when you saw him, that person smiled every time you saw him. And a lot of you that have had the privilege of knowing Down syndrome people, they are the happiest people on this earth. And not only that, when they get stuck on one certain thing, you are not getting them off that topic. And so what Steve loved more than anything was Duke basketball. And he wanted to go to a game, and that was the only thing that he wanted for Christmas that year, was to go to that Duke basketball game. And he was telling anybody and everybody that he could that he had to get tickets to that Duke basketball game. So it just so happened that this new coach came into town, Coach K. And it just so happened that Steve's cousin, who was a contractor, got the contracting gig at Coach K's house. So he's there, and it's a brand new client, and it's a brand new basketball coach, and his brother-in-law's not really sure how to do this, but he knows if he doesn't at least ask, he's going to have that whole side of the family coming down on him, because this is the only thing Steve wants for Christmas. So he goes, "Coach K, I really hate to ask you this, but would you mind getting my brother-in-law a ticket to one of the Duke games? And trust me, these tickets are hard to get, having lived in the center of North Carolina." And Coach K, brand new, goes, "Sure." And he explains to him that this is my son-in-law, that he has Down syndrome. He just needs to go to one game. He can sit way up in the nosebleed section. It doesn't matter. This is just what he wants. And Coach K says, no. He's going to sit behind me. So 37 years later, Coach K is coaching. And every year for 37 years, Steve would write a letter to Coach K saying, can I get a ticket? And every year for 37 years, Steve got one ticket directly behind Coach K for every game that they played in that place. And if you look back through Facebook, not through Facebook, but through Google, you'll find all kinds of pictures of Steve there. And he got older and older and older. And Steve died about 3 years ago. And it was the first year that when Coach K turned around, he didn't have Steve sitting behind him. Steve knew almost every player's name on every team for 37 years. Coach K didn't have to do that. And in fact, he didn't tell anybody he had done that. It was only after Steve died that family members brought the story out, because who does that? This was absolute love. This was the same gift that Mary gave with that alabaster oil to Jesus that Coach K gave to Steve. And Coach K would look at Steve in the eye, and he would shake his hand at the beginning of every game, and he would say, I am so glad you were here. So that's what I invite you to do this week. To honor each and every person you see. To look them straight in the eye and to say, I am so glad you are a part of my life. To to text people or email people that you have memories about. Maybe that childhood friend that you've known since kindergarten, and say, thank you so much for the memories that I have of the two of us together. And to giggle and smile and maybe even get a little embarrassed because you know that very first kiss that was so embarrassing and you only told one person about. Maybe text that one person and say, I was thinking about you today. That's the gift of this gospel, is it takes us to that one last week before we know that we're going to die. And it makes us think about who is important to us. Who do we want to get in contact with? And every person we do come in contact with, to look them straight in the eye and to say, you are important to me. Because that's the biggest gift we can give anybody, is our heart to theirs. And all God's children said, amen.